Interesting. So the first thing I was going to talk about today was probably the most popular JRE definitely this year, and I might even say in the last 2 years. I was getting so many calls, texts, messages. Have you watched this episode? Have you watched this episode? And it's funny because I don't really watch JRE like that anymore. I haven't watched Rogan in, I don't know, it's got to be like around COVID times. The last time I like sat and watched like an entire episode. I tried to watch the Zack Snyder episode, but I was like, man, this is making me not like Zack Snyder more than I already do. Went from like not liking Zack Snyder to loving Zack Snyder to then he comes back and then I hate Zack Snyder and I listen to the episode and I hate him more. I'm just like, I can't. I think Tarantino was another one I probably watched a decent amount of. Couldn't finish it. What's up, KO? Good to see you. But we had Terrance Howard show up on the show, and I knew there was something to this when meme pages were talking about the episode. And I will say, 10 out of 10 recommend. Not the whole thing. Definitely not the whole thing. However, the first 10, 15 minutes alone, entertaining as hell. Because you start to feel like you might be a dummy. But then you kind of realized, no, they're just psychos. They're all psychos. But what I did want to see on this episode was him talk about Iron Man, Disney, and more importantly, Robert Downey Jr. And he did. It was very short. You got here 7-minute clip. It's not the whole 7 minutes, but he felt very betrayed by Robert Downey. And I thought that was interesting because Robert Downey was kind of put on the map by this movie. Like, he wasn't the biggest star going into the movie. So it was weird to me that he would feel like Robert Downey wasn't there for him or helped him out when he got booted. But I feel like he didn't have that kind of power going into it. But we'll listen to that. And then there's this clip here from Watch What Happens Live 10 years ago. And I don't remember watching this. So let's watch the JRE first, and then we'll go back to that other clip. I'm sure there's commercials. Oh, no commercials for that.
Norm, you get pushed outside. You don't get funding anymore.
Well, I think part of the problem is also that when someone defines someone as one particular occupation, and for you, you're a very talented actor. So
I'm
you're a very talented actor, my opinion. And
that was my first red flag when he was putting together a thing, and I was like, is he putting together like a physical, like molecule, like a model of a molecule or something? And I was just like, all right, something's off here. Something's off here.
Thank you.
So people think of you in that way, and so there's no way he's awesome at something else too.
Yeah, well, a lot of that happened, like you said, the guy that interviewed you for Rolling Stone.
Yeah,
Eric. I invited him into my home for 2 days, and I walked him through all of these things, but he had an agenda at Rolling Stone. They didn't say Terrance Howard has discovered this, that, and the other. They said Terrance Howard, a very dangerous mind. So you put that kind of...
Did they mean that in a complimentary way? I didn't read the article, so I can't tell you.
It wasn't taken in a complimentary way.
You know, I meant to look that up, actually. To see if there's any truth to that. 2015, The Dangerous Mind. He's a leading man on network TV's biggest new show, but trouble and turmoil have chased him his entire life. The Empire star opens up. No, I don't want to. Today for me has been about searching out who I am, he says. We've got all these different faces that want to come out. There's at least 4 just in this moment, with a possible expansion to 432. But which one do you let out? Is it the person who's cool that you've mastered? Is it the excited little boy? For the moment, he's leaning toward the youngster. In his head, he's now 6 years old, standing in front of a different mirror in Cleveland, in the ghetto, just a little light-skinned black kid with his daddy, Tyrone, right next to him. His daddy, who 3 years ago spent 11 months in prison for stabbing a man to death while waiting in line to see a department store Santa. Wow. Everyone had children there. Little Terrance's coat was splattered with blood, but now his daddy was here and saying to him, see, why does it keep these ads keep jumping the screen? You see that curly MFer right there? That little redhead MFer right there? You love him because the only person that's going to be there no matter what happens in your life is that little MFer. Wow. Quite an opening right there. Howard has never forgotten those words. They've helped him through some pretty depressing moments. At one time, he was going to a big movie star, having built his reputation on films like Crash and Hustle and Flow, and his bank account with movies like Iron Man, for which he was paid $3.5 million, more than any other member of the cast, including Robert Downey Jr. But words started to leak out about Howard being difficult on set. As well, women began to speak up about his temper. He soon found himself reduced to $40,000 a movie. When all that stuff went down about me, you're not in any bargaining position, he says. You're shushed. You're a persona non grata. So I remember when they said he left Iron Man because he was becoming a problem, but also was wanting more money for Iron Man. And this was all speculation at the time. This was speculation. But let's go back. I'll put a link in the comments if anybody wants to read this article. But let's go back and see where he takes us.
So they thought you were crazy.
They took it as crazy.
Right.
And he tells you that I had something serious, but to everyone else, I want to take you guys to something where, you remember Nikola Tesla said if mankind understood the magnificence of the numbers 3, 6, and 9, he would have the keys to the secrets of the universe. If you will go to the linchpins bonding.
Can I bring you back to the Rolling Stone thing, though, before, because you kind of abandoned it? I think.
No, I'm going to show you.
Okay.
I'll show
they have
you
an
on
agenda.
that. They had an agenda.
Yeah.
Because remember, at the same time, they were calling me a wife beater. And
hey, Jedi Niner, good to see you. Drive safe. I love that Joe interrupted on that one. I feel like Joe should have interrupted a lot more in this interview. This part came, I don't know, almost 50 minutes in, and Terrance was just like on a rant. And I've heard of that, the 3, 6, and 9 or whatever, the secrets to the universe. A couple other YouTubers I watch have referenced that, and I'm of the mindset that if there's some sort of like belief that helps you live a proper moral compass or have a proper moral compass, more power to you. More power to you. But I don't know what that would have to do with the question that was asked of Terrance. We'll see. Cool to know. Good to see you. Welcome aboard. And yes, everybody hit that like button. Let's proceed. By the way, I also stop a lot for the sake of copyright strike. A little behind the scenes for you guys.
And all of those things. And then I put out the video showing what that same woman that had painted in a black eye, those pictures weren't made at the police station or at the hospital. She took those pictures herself, and she was blackmailing me for years because I had when we met. I was studying to be a Jehovah's Witness. I was trying to do all those things. So we weren't having any sex or any of that stuff. So we got engaged, and I bring her to my home in Philly, and I had this tape because anytime I had interactions with somebody.
All right. So again, he starts to get very weird with it. Very weird with it. Good morning, JB. Good to see you. He says, listening on the road. Love that. You also drive safe. And General Kenobi, good to see you. He's the true Hollywood. The torch has been passed from me to Kenobi. He's on a tear. He's up to 5,000 subscribers. It's like you're getting 1,000 subscribers a week. Insanity. So you could see the question starts one way and he just drifts. So he's going to talk about how there was violence there. He was trying to become a JOV, or Jehovah's Witness, whatever the acronym would be. And it's just blah, blah, blah. It's just like, it's nonsense. I'm going to skip ahead and see if we get to that.
That was my mother's tape, where she told me, I know you're going to be okay, Terry.
Then further down the world of acting, you would have abandoned this.
Oh, my goodness. I had, I was doing Iron Man.
Yeah.
Out of nowhere, that gets taken away. We did a 3-picture deal with Marvel, a 3-picture deal, $4.5 million for the first one, $7.5 to $8 million for the second one, $12 million for the third. We signed it. They come back to me the week that my mother dies, and they called my agent Charles King he was at William Morris at the time, and they said, yeah, we want Terrance, but we want to come back for $1 million instead of the $8 million that we had agreed to. And my agent had an emotional reaction to a business decision, and he said, F you, and hung up the phone. Well, immediately they go to Don Cheadle.
Oh.
But instead of just doing that, they had to spin, he was terrible on set and all of these things, and went through all this stuff. And I'm calling Robert Downey Jr. I'm calling him because when I was doing the Brave one with Jodie Foster, Susan Downey was a producer with Joe Silver. She comes over to my trailer and she's like, wow, it's so amazing. Congratulations on Iron Man. It's the first time they've hired the second lead before they've hired the first. But Robert wants to go in there. And they were talking about Clive Davis and all of that. And I was like, okay, great. I'm just moving along doing my thing. And she was like, but Robert really wants to go in, but they won't see him. And I was like, I love Robert.
So I'm already, this part here, everything else, I was like, all right, I'm willing to entertain the idea, but I tend to lean towards there's some capping going on, only because Jon Favreau wrote the movie, produced the movie, directed the movie, all that. Let me just make sure we get proper titles here. So producers were Kevin Feige and Avi Arad, and Jon Favreau directed it. So Jon Favreau had this image of Iron Man being Robert Downey Jr. His whole concept was, we're going to do the man in the bottle, Tony Stark, and the right person to do this would be Robert Downey. So I feel like people are already pushing for him behind the scenes outside of Terrance. I don't think Terrance was the catalyst to Robert Downey getting in. I don't think he had a conversation with somebody and they're like, oh, okay, let's bring the man in. And yes, thank you for your service, JB. Yeah, Memorial Day is always a weird one with how do you greet a service person? But I think everybody always just appreciates a thank you for your service. So there you go. We appreciate you, JB, and everybody else listening who may be a vet or active.
Love what he does. I loved him in Weird Science. I loved him.
Who did they want?
They wanted Clive Davis to play him because remember, in the series, War Machine was supposed to take over.
Right.
And I'm like, well, if Robert wants to come in, so I called Avi Arad immediately. He was the producer on it, and I'm like, Avi, I hear Robert wants to come in, but you guys won't even let him audition. He's like, no, we can't bond him. I'm like, instead of the $4.5 you want to give me, why don't you take $1 million for the bond for him? If he gets, and let him audition, you know. And so he gets the part. Robert is like, I love you, thank you so much, da 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 da. Well, when this other thing happened, I'm calling Robert, and he's doing Sherlock Holmes. I called him 27 times, and I'm like, and then leave a message. I'm calling his assistant. I'm like, I need the help I gave you. I didn't hear from him until 3 years later. I bumped into him at Brian Grazier's wedding. And then, but at that time I'd had Empire or whatever, and I came back, and he was like, oh, but everything worked out for you. And, you know, that broke me a little bit, but I know how hard Robert had it.
Coming out of jail.
Coming out of that jail.
Oops.
It's time for some new one.
I don't even know what I just did. What is this ad?
When you speak.
So, yeah, I mean, JB said it the best there. He said, you know, John wanted Robert Downey. I think that's like pretty common knowledge, pretty public knowledge. So I'm not sure Terrance, again, like I said, was the catalyst for it. Probably helped with it. Maybe it was like an extra person in there, but I don't think it was like that. I don't. Now let's see this old clip. This is from Watch What Happens Live 10 years ago.
This is going to get me in a lot of trouble, but who gives
Just keep it clean.
Yeah. It turns out that the person that I helped become Iron Man, when it was time to re-up for the second one, took the money that was supposed to go to me and pushed me out. And I called my friend that I helped.
It seems like a different story there. Let's go back one more time.
Clean.
Yeah. It turns out that the person that I helped become Iron Man, when it was time to re-up for the second one, took the money that was supposed to go to me and pushed me out. And I called my friend that I helped get the first job, and he didn't call me back for 3 months.
How are things now with your friend?
Oh, I love him. God's going to bless him.
It seems like a different story, right? Same plot threads, right? But like a different story. That one's first 3 months, not 3 years, which, you know, it could have been a slip. It's live TV. But 3 months, not 3 years. And I don't think Robert Downey, I don't know the man, but I don't think he has the power to be like, hey, take the money from him, give it to me, and then I'll come back. Like, I don't think that's how that works. I don't think you can do that. And this kind of rolls into the a gray area. Shout out to LeBron. Good to see you. He's in the house. Yeah, same. This rolls into that area of like, who were we talking about? And I can't remember who we were talking about, but it's where I quote The Rock. And I say, know your role and shut your mouth. If I'm Terrance Howard and I see what has happened I was talking about Austin St. John and the Power Rangers. Hey, look at that. Sal coming in from Twitch. Love it. I was talking about it with the Power Rangers. If you are Terrance Howard, if you're whoever, movie comes out, you are not the biggest star of the movie. Like, as the movie is in release, as figures are selling, as promotional things are happening, as the phone calls are ringing, and you see that it's that person getting all the phone calls for new roles, new sequels, all this stuff. As all that wild stuff's happening, if somebody says, hey, we're going to give you less, do you want to stay on? Yes. You are not the star. You're not the star. If they offer you less to stay on, best believe they have no issue. They have no issue letting you go. That's a courtesy call at that point. And it sucks. At that point, you have to acknowledge, as DJ Academics has said to Rory and Mal when they left Joe Budden, you're just a worker, man. You're a worker. You're not the boss. And that's a real tough pill to swallow sometimes. And I feel like Terrance didn't want to acknowledge that. Because in this episode, at some point, it wasn't in the clip, but at some point, or maybe it was, and I just forgot, but at some point he references how the title of Iron Man at a certain point was to be passed from Tony to Rhodey. And yes, we've seen this thing in comics now where they're like doing all this mantle passing, but that's not something that people are going to want to see. Like after the first one, Rhodey wasn't like some massive hit on the movie where we're like, oh, I can't wait for Rhodey to be the freaking Iron Man. Like, no, you're going to get the War Machine armor in the next one, and then we'll see what happens in the third movie. Is what it is. But I feel like he fumbled this bag. I feel like his arrogance, I'm Terrance Howard, fumbled it. And at a certain point, like the Iron Sheik said, you got to be humble or you'll break your back. And Terrance Howard broke his back. So I feel like that's on him. If Robert Downey did turn his back on him, effed up. But hey, maybe he had it coming. So we'll see. We'll see how things play out with this. Honestly, I don't think it goes anywhere. Robert Downey is so massive right now. I feel like him responding to this is beneath him. Like, if I were him, I wouldn't want to fumble the bag for anybody, especially Terrance Howard. So I say, mum's the word. If you want to have a meetup for actually, I don't think he drinks anymore. So if you want to have a meetup for a kombucha, talk about it. Sure. If you want to pull a Rocky 3 and they go to a gym, lock the doors, box it out. Sure. But Robert, to make a public response to this, I feel like it's pointless. Absolutely pointless.